Thank you for your patience. My name is Jennifer Sertl, and I've actually been an executive coach and working between Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo for the last 20 years. And most recently, I've actually joined 2 teams. It's kind of fun because sometimes people go and then they have a business and then they go do their own thing afterwards. I've been self-employed for 20 years, and the 2 teams I'm on is Sertl Optics, which is a 360-degree camera system company that's really transforming immersive technology. And then the other is Say Hi, which is an AI that helps support well-being in business. And so I do have a couple of copies. I wrote a book called Upstate Founders Playbook, which is about founders across the region. There's a couple of these up here, and I'd love you to be able to get one. And I'm going to share one of the things that I've always cared about. I'm originally from Denver, and I studied existential philosophy. And I've had to wait about 30 years to really have the kind of value that's necessary, is how do you create coherence? And the interface that I care the most about is the interface between you and yourself, right? So when I think about conversation and communication as competitive advantage, even though we only have about 40 minutes, I'm going to take you through 3 distinct layers. One is the layer between how it is that you speak to yourself. The second is the layer around how it is that you relate to your colleagues. And then the third is how does your business communicate to the marketplace, right? So and it's a lot to cover, but I'm so glad you're here because I really feel passionate about it and don't feel that people are talking enough about the interface of the self to the self. So that's where I'm going to start, and we'll go here. As you know how important language is when you're doing your machine learning, how impeccable you are in your query, right? Why are we not that impeccable in other places in our life? And so I will tell you, one question can change your life, and I'll tell you the question that changed mine was that in 2011, my son, who was 4 years old at the time, said, "Mommy, does your heart remote control people?" Okay, so this was, again, 2011, very much before the hype about Web 3, right? So you'd be in a post-Web 3, that probably would mean something different. But in 2011, for me, driving my son to daycare, thinking I have to get to work, I'm going to be late, and my son just drops this bomb on me, right? I had to pull over. Because to me, all of a sudden, I realized for the very first time, my son was going to grow up in a world where he would never know the difference between reality and virtual reality. He would know reality, and for him, it would be immersive. It would be, however it is that things are, right? So that pretty much changed my life. I was not working in technology companies at the time, and I had to make the shift because I didn't want him to be in a world where I didn't know the language, right? So I'm still struggling with the language of coding and all of those things, but I have chosen to work inside of technology teams in hopes that I can still connect with the next generation, right? So I think why I'm here is important. So what I'm going to talk to you about is a little bit about, conversation is competitive advantage, but I got to talk a little bit about competitive advantage. So every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up and it knows it must run faster than the fastest lion or it will be killed, right? And every morning a lion wakes up and it has to run faster than the slowest gazelle or it will starve. It doesn't matter if you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you've got to start running, right? So this is a wonderful quote about conditioning. How it shows up in business is the battle between every startup and incumbent comes to whether a startup gets distribution before the incumbent gets innovation. So do I have any startup founders in the room right here? Just a couple? Okay. So conditioning is about how do we make sure that we can eat what we need to eat or survive what we need to survive. But I'm saying to myself that today we have to take a little bit different look at what is competition and competitive advantage. Okay, so again, this is about the interface of you and you, but let's talk about influence. Once upon a time, if you look at this slide, influence used to be whoever was the strongest would win. This is a hierarchy, so everything that comes before it, kind of continues with it. And then it became mobility, right? Whoever can actually travel, in addition to being strong, would have competitive advantage. And then currency became a type of trade. And so whoever had currency would actually have the power. The reason I put Kodak is Kodak, believe it or not, in Rochester, New York, where I live, was one of the first global infrastructure companies. So whoever has infrastructure would actually win. And then we move a little bit more and look at, customer data. Whoever has the most customer data would win. And some of the students that I work with came into the world where LinkedIn was it. It wasn't what you do, how strong you are, how much money you have, but who is it that you know in LinkedIn is your power. The power's in your network. And where we are today, and the reason I have these two images on the last, is that whoever has the most understanding of neuroscience will have the most power, right? And the picture right next to it is augmented, right? Whoever has the most augmented knowledge will have the power, right? And a lot of people don't really think about cognition as a competitive advantage, but the issue is that there are people that are selling algorithms to sell you things to make you poor and make you fat, right? Because they understand psychology better than we do. And so we really need, as human beings and individuals, parents, founders, community members, to really begin to study how our mind works even more so that we can actually be more protected on how things are influencing our behavior, okay? So, we could probably have a day on just this slide. We're not going to do that, but I just really feel that we need to think about competitive advantage. We have to talk about what are the different ways in which we have influence and power and competitiveness. And in this environment that we're in right now, you have it based on your strength, based on how much you've traveled, based on who you know, based on how well you understand augmented technology, and based on how well you know your own brain and how your brain works, and your biases, your cognitive biases. So we're going to continue to move on. Now I want you to see there's been a shift in how things are valued, right? And again, we're going to go into communication as an intangible asset. We have to look at one point in time, in 2002, was really the beginning of this revolution of everyone having tablets, having the internet, having Twitter, having globalization in our living rooms, right? And I want you to look at how much the value of the individual company was really, a fifth of the value was only in the things that were considered image, brand, customer-supplier relationships, how the organization built and kind of codified their processes, and then know-how, right? And today, why people can start a global business in their garage, right, is because how much it shifted. And this is the biggest, most dramatic shift I can show you, is that value inside of an organization is based on image, brand, customer, supplier relationships, customer loyalty, ideas for customers, all of these things. All of these things in the yellow and the blue are things that require dialogue, connection, and curation, the same way that you would garden. Your relationships, these ideas, these patents, these things come about through collaboration and certain things like that. So many times I speak into an audience full of founders, and so this is kind of an interesting thing. But I want you to begin to look at that how things are valued more is becoming how well there's coordination of things that are hard to measure, but things that you control through how you show up and how you connect, okay? So if this is true, and you would agree with me just for 50 minutes, that this could be true, that a whole lot of value is based on how you carry yourself and how you interact in the world, I think we need a new compass, right? And so this is kind of a thing that I really believe is that our competitive advantage today is how accurately we scan our environments and how we make decisions. Would you agree with that? That our ability to be competitive today is really how accurately do we read our environment, and then how well do we make decisions. Okay, it's very fundamental, but super, super hard work. So I'm going to go back to that in just a minute. So when my daughter was 10 years old, was the first time that she made a decision, and I needed a way to tell her there were other choices available to her, okay? And the reason that I love soccer is that it's an international sport. and it's also a sport that's very inclusive for men and women, right? So it's just a really great metaphor for business. And where you see you kick the ball. Yeah, you love it when I say kick the ball, you hear that noise. Right, you hear that noise, kick the ball. Because the word decide means to kill. Homicide is to kill someone else. Suicide is to kill yourself. Decide, making a choice, is killing all other possibilities, right? So in order for us to look at the competitive, to look at the environment and make good decisions, we really have to understand how do we select certain data to make decisions, right? We're thin slicing all the time because the available data to us is overwhelming, information overload. So we've all created significant filters that allow us to have overwhelm, okay, cool, I can make sense of this, let me go move, right, to decide. And so this is really very fundamental, is that we're all so complex. We have values, goals, dreams, history, and caffeine, right, and sugar, and all of this, and then we have to act. We have to see where's the ball on the soccer field, and I want to be successful, I got to kill the ball. So what I'm suggesting to you is that the idea of you having better results in your life, having a better, whatever your goals are. And I know because it's almost the end of the year, many of us are looking at, where are my goals, what am I doing? A lot of people look at where the foot hits the ball, right? How am I kicking that ball? I'm saying, no, you have to go up a lot higher and think of what are the filters that are informing my behavior that's allowing me to get into a certain position to kick the ball in any way that I want to do that, okay? So I said we need a better compass. So the compass that I invite you to imagine, again, so we can't even talk about, if I go back here, communication is where the foot hits the ball, right? You make a decision, you choose the word choice, you decide who you're going to talk to, you're going to decide when you're going to talk to them, right? But in order for us to actually be better communicators, we actually have to have a better sense of how well are we taking care of ourselves so that we can actually see our reality with accuracy, right? So what's interesting is that if you go to Barnes & Noble, and thank God there still are bookstores, right? There still are bookstores. You go and you'll see the self-help section is at a very different section than the business, right? And that bothers me so much. Because what is a business? A business is an aggregate of a collective of actions aligned to create a result, right? A business is almost like an organism. It's like it's alive. A business is alive. It's a complex adaptive system. And so I don't like that they're in two separate places. So I took some time with my colleague, Kobe Huberman, and we actually designed this model where you look at yourself, okay? I want businesses to be more humane, and I want individuals to be more strategic. Because if, in fact, we can do this, we will collectively make better decisions. And I know everything about technology is about friction-free, right? If, in fact, we can create less friction, we'll be able to create less complexity, and if we have less complexity, we'll actually be able to create more results in whatever gives us a sense of well-being or fulfillment, right? This is all tracking. So let's just start with you, yourself, all right? And this is why I'm so glad you're here, because you're in this technology world, and where people are talking about, you're the ghost in your machine, right? Human beings are the killer app. And I want the app to hit reset. Here we go. We are here right now doing that reset. So spirituality is not religion. It's just, do you know that you matter and that your presence impacts others? It's as simple as that, right? Health and wellness, really hoping, I have a Whoop here that helps me track my sleep. So it is what you eat, how well you sleep, exercise, and all of those things. So we know we have a health, well-being aspect. Relationship is also really important. Who we love and making sure that how we do intimacy is great, because if we don't have a good personal intimate life, sometimes when we're at work, we might take feedback more personally, right? Or we might treat our employees like sons and daughters versus coworkers and not honor the co-creation. That the hardest thing about business today is the 4 generations in the workplace, the idea that there is no real hierarchy because we all have different ways to contribute. right? And if you don't have a good relationship and get self-esteem in other places, the needs you're going to have at work are going to be a little bit more than is healthy, and you're not going to be on accuracy, right? Emotional well-being is your ability to embrace your talent without pride and your inadequacy without shame, right? Because if, in fact, you're in an environment and you're feeling shame, you're not going to be on accuracy. You're not going to read things as they are. And if, in fact, you're proud, you're probably not going to hear suggestions. You're not going to get the feedback that will allow the whole system to be healthier and better, right? Finance and intellect. My vision is that everyone has three things they're strengthening at one time. One is obviously technology and their ability to compete in the core competencies that are required to be competitive in your field. That's one. The second is communication, having to do with some sort of interpersonal leadership or reflection, that sort of thing. And then poetry or fiction, right? Way back in 2016, Time had a huge article about all the bots being trained by novels. They were feeding novels into machine learning to help them learn empathy and learn different aspects of connection, right? So my vision is that you have those three things that you're building at every time. On the business side, every company has a brand. Every company has some sort of KPIs and how they're sensing, how they're measuring the company. They have their shareholder experience, right? They have their core business clarity, right? And you know from the book Good to Great, we know what that is. It's what does the company do exceptionally well that allows the company to feel a sense of joy and that we're great at something, and then something that the market will pay for, right? Financial sensors and knowledge. So if, in fact, we want to participate more competitively in the world and know how to show up, it's really important that we take care of ourselves and really create a design around how to do that, okay? And again, we could spend a lot of time on all these moments, but we want to go through. So what is my suggestion to you? Because of the filter piece, my suggestion to you is that you think of three distinct words that help define you, or that are part of your own identity. And there's a lot of different words that you can choose from that. And I'm just going to show you what I did with mine. So the architecture, here's what I want you to pay attention to, not necessarily the words. But because there's so much complexity, if you codify how you want to show up in the world, and I don't like how people say, build your personal brand. That doesn't sound as deep as what I'm saying, is that you need a way to curate and protect your identity so that when you participate, you know what and what not to do to injure your soul, your spirit, right? And so what I invite people to do, even though there's a lot of words on this list, did it go back to that? Well, I have some list here, and certainly I believe you're going to get access to all of these slides. I chose resilience, responsiveness, and reflection, right? Like what I hope is in my presence, people feel more resilient, they have a sense of being more responsive, and they leave more reflective, asking better questions, or at least different questions, right? And so you take the three words that you design, and then you put them into a definition with some observables, right? So that I am not saying to have agility, you need to be resilient, responsive, and reflective. I'm saying for myself and how I fine-tune myself, I use this design to ensure that I'm sharpening the areas that will help me be more resilient, more responsive, and more reflective, right? And when I go and do due diligence on where have I shown up and been effective, I benchmark it against how I define these things. Right? So having, in this world where algorithms are out to get you, I mean, I'm feeling there's this competitiveness around your headspace, right? Attention deficit, right? Everyone wants your attention. And we are attention deficit. So how do you begin to create some armor to help you protect your psyche is you create a structure that you can actually help navigate complexity with in this way, right? And then I also just really invite you, if you're not already a journal writer, to keep a journal. And any journal people here that keep your journal, you keep your journal. That's awesome. That's awesome. So all you do with your 3 words is then you go and you ask, let's use resilient, responsive, reflective. This week, where have I been reflective, responsive, right? And then you use a delta, not a red pen, not I really screwed up at this event, right? What you do is you do the green to say, where can I improve? But the delta actually means growth. That's all it is. And the hardest part about our culture is that we feel embarrassed to be clumsy, right? How are we supposed to learn? The jobs of tomorrow haven't even been created yet. And many of us are asked to learn in public with social media all around us, being filmed at every hour of the day. There's no privacy. The problem is that anytime you learn new things, you're always going to be clumsy, right? And so we have to find a way to kind of track that and do that. I will tell you what, these 4 questions have been my 4 questions. You know, how oftentimes you kind of do a personal reset. And whether I'm working with a team, or whether I'm working with a client, or whether I'm working with my own self, these 4 questions I've been using since 2005. Where have I been? What have I learned? Where am I going? And what is required? Okay? These questions, they should come with some sort of warning, right? Because you're onto a good question. Good questions should lead to something yet undiscovered, right? So the point of a question is evolution in some point, right? But when you ask authentic questions, the hardest thing is that you may not like the answer. In fact, many of us actually are afraid to journal or afraid to ask these questions because you realize that if you ask them for real, your life might have to change, right? So when I've asked these questions, I've had to change jobs. When I've asked these questions, I've had to leave a 21-year marriage, right? These are not questions for they take courage. Courage means heart, right? But in the age of authenticity, which I would argue that we are, our ability to create value is our ability for our voice and the way we show up to be congruent. And congruence requires these questions. And congruence will help you navigate complexity in new ways. So I've been talking a lot about you and you, because these are how it is that you speak to yourself and how it is that you protect yourself has everything to do with how accurately you scan your environment and how you make decisions. You need to investigate your filter, strengthen the certainty of your identity in your filter, and then just trust certain things will show up for you and other things will not, right? I know this is heavy. It should come sometimes with Kleenex or with Tylenol. I'm not sure where people are with this, but there is coffee outside. So yes, coherence is perhaps the most important concept for more impactful conversations. I'm going to move now towards our conversations. This is so profound for me, is the idea that it really was around 2000 when I realized a lot of people say, well, you have conversations to get work done. But what if the work was the conversation, right? And again, I go back to how impeccable I am with my AI tools on how I use language, because I know everything to do about how I input is going to have everything to do with what I get output. And so the idea of, if in fact you're like me, I'm going to have 25 to 30 conversations with people that I care about, that I want to take different action as a result of interacting with me, right? So if I treat those conversations with the level of care that I do to certain things I'm researching on my machine learning tools, it just creates incredibly different outcomes. And so I want you to think about, is there a way to create more space, and how it is that you choose to show up, and how you prepare for certain conversations that you want to be in. Because your presence will create new opportunities for you, right? There are things. It's amazing to be like a lighthouse. Is that if you think about how lights come in, there's things that will come to you that you couldn't pay to play, or you couldn't even apply to get, because the way you showed up is going to create new opportunities it's never not happened. And anyone that has come back to me, and I do get a lot of emails from people after hearing this talk, they'll come back and they'll say, usually about 6 months, sometimes 2 years, you're not going to believe it. This was scary, but here's where I am now. And it's magical. It really is. So we know external conversations, internal conversations, we need to be more impeccable with how we carry ourselves in our day-to-day. And as you know, on LinkedIn, there's 1 million people in the room, right? And a lot of people are deploying a lot of different tools for communicating. And I would just say, if you have your own filter, even if, and it's not, many of you may work for another company, it's not against the brand of the existing company that you're in, but your ability to have your filter will allow you to know what articles to reshare, what things you want to comment on, and will help you be a beacon. And the whole company rises when all of the people inside are emulating a quality that allows people to build trust and believe that it's going to further whatever it is that they're doing. This is, for companies that want to kind of create a presence inside, I ask them to use a filter as well. If you think about designing a company for innovation, it's very different than designing a company for cost, right? And the best example I can give you there is Mont Blanc and Bic. They're both pen companies. They're both profitable, right? They're both Fortune 500 or 5,000. But the infrastructure on how they're built and the culture and the values of each are so distinctly different, right? And so, and you may be working for a company that's about innovation or know-how or premium or synergy or delivery or velocity. The V is for velocity and the A is for agility. But what ends up happening is if you're working on a team, understand, is that team, is that company, is its promise about premium? Is its promise about innovation? Is its promise about cost? Because there are decisions that you can make that are going to be more aligned with that particular culture based on that. So then I go to the two companies that I've worked with. I wanted to share with you how you saw the architecture I have with Agility 3R with resilience, responsiveness, and reflection. The same thing can be done. Sertl Optics is a team of 19 engineers. Only I, the CFO, used to be an architect, and then I am their director of marketing. And but everyone else on the team is just incredible optics, mechanics, and software engineers. It's a really brilliant team. But we have a product that isn't going to be on the market for another 2 years, and I've been working with them for 3, right? So it's 5. So we had to create some sort of presence in how do we do that without a product? Well, we had to say, what's distinctly different about this unique team? And when I interviewed the team of engineers, I got some neat things about, what were your favorite projects? What were you working on that was amazing? When do you feel like you're in the state of flow? And I'll never forget, one of the engineers said to me, Jennifer, I care about detail. I care about detail so much. I care about the forest and the trees and the branches on the trees, right? Whew, I've not heard that statement before, right? So what we did is we have, if you can see it, know-how, synergy, and innovation. We have a culture built on, know-how, synergy, and innovation. And what's exciting is that when we do articles, when we do tweets, when we do podcasts, when we do any storytelling, it has to fit our filter. Because we want to be a brand that happens to sell cameras, but we are a company that's based on innovation, know-how, and synergy. And if you look at all of our social media blueprint, you're going to see these things. The same happened with Grit Health. Grit Health is an online platform for cancer patients. Really neat story. The individual was a 27-year-old bodybuilder, nationally ranked with testicular cancer. When he was treated, the founder felt like he was treated like an old man, right? And he said, I really feel like no one's seeing me as an individual. So he created a platform for cancer patients to help support advocacy and belonging inside. And so their culture's 3 words were authenticity, relentless, and together, right? It used to be community, but through the work of iterating and through our community, we actually found that the word was together. because together meant more than community, because there were so many people that felt alone, right? And so the reason I give you these two examples is that it can work for engineering, it can work for behavioral science, it can work for community, is the idea of creating a filter and then making sure that filter has coherence and at least descriptors that identify it. And what it does, it allows you to know ways to participate that create more of that lighthouse appeal. Does that make sense? And so my vision for all of you is that you will think about, what if I have a coat of armor that before I step into the world, I find a way to kind of gear up for how I want to show up, or what gifts I want people to get from me, or how I can filter. If you create this architecture, it will really amaze you at how quickly you'll be able to make decisions. And the decisions are going to be powerful ones that are going to open doors that you don't know that you want to open. And so I just love, I love the idea of the water droplet, and that we have no idea the impact that we have. And so I want, like, my favorite thing is that change alone is eternal, perpetual, and immortal. What doesn't change is the human DNA, right? The synthesis of, like, that DNA strand. And so if you have a behavioral strand, I believe that the conversation with yourself is going to be stronger and healthier. The conversation you have with your colleagues is going to be stronger and healthier. And if you're within a company, that company's conversation with the marketplace is going to be a lot stronger. So this is a lot here, but my hope is that if you want to take a deeper dive with anything here, please connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm so grateful that you spent some time with me this morning. Thank you.